I've had an exceptionally favored life. And I've been happy most of the time. I'm really blessed that I've had this personality that's just been happy. And but one of the worst times of my life was the morning of my 40th birthday. I woke up to the fact that I wasn't rich or famous as I thought I'd be by that time. And I felt like I'd failed. Anybody ever been in that position? You wake up one day and you just think, what's happening? This is where I'm at. And most people call this a midlife crisis. And, because no one grows up quite like they imagined. And some people not only get depressed at this time, but they make some terrible choices to try and get themselves out of the hole that they're in. Some give up their really good jobs. Others leave their families. Some others make slightly less harmful decisions like dieting. I see that as a harmful decision. Or retail therapy. Ladies, I need to feel better. I'm going retail therapy. For retail therapy, go and spend all your bucks. Or for a guy buying a motorbike or a boat, or having an extra body piercing, or a tattoo, or a lift of some sort. You ladies will understand that probably more than most guys. But the list goes on. Something happens. You feel depressed. You feel like you need to change things. And especially for me, as I say, it happened on my 40th birthday. And also a bit of a bummer that it happened on my birthday. You kind of, 40th birthday, it's going to be great. And you wake up depressed. And so that was really nasty. And by the grace of God, a friend of mine, Brett, who was the youth pastor at the time at our previous church, he noticed at our staff prayer meeting that I was looking down and I wasn't looking myself. And he came to my office afterwards and he asked me, what's wrong? And I told him how I felt. And his first reaction was, but Rev, we can see Christ in you. He used to call me Rev. And as he said that, he totally freed me from the sinking feeling I'd been experiencing. And my midlife crisis was over. It lasted about half an hour. It was a tough one, but I thank God that it was over. And a few months later, I got to see a Bruce Willis movie called The Kid. Who saw The Kid? It was a very cute, feel-good story about a chap who was nearing 40. When he realized his life was going nowhere. And at that stage, he encounters his 8-year-old self. And it's quite a lovely story, very beautiful. And in the movie, his younger self probably helped him more than he helped the kid. But together, they got him out of the slump that he'd found himself in. And he was also able to help his younger self face the giants that he had to face as a little kid in a far more courageous and beneficial way than he had done it before. And so with that in mind, I'm titling this message, which is part one of our latest series of the same name, called Dear Younger Me. Or what would you say to the younger you? And unfortunately, I can't go back in history to my younger me. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. I can't go and tell him what he could and shouldn't do to enjoy life to the full and be all he could be. But I realize that I'm almost 40 years old in the Lord, which is a fair amount of age, and the Lord's blessed me with a whole bunch of younger me's, and that's you. You may be older than me. Some of you may be older than me physically, but you're not older than me, or most of you aren't older than me spiritually. And so for the next few weeks, I'm going to share some of the wonderful lessons that the Lord's taught me, because you must know I've changed 1,000% from what I was before. God has had to teach me. And why teach somebody something and then keep it all to yourself? I remember a guy saying to me, knowledge, how did he say? Knowledge that's you don't share is like a library that's doors are always closed. And so when you have things that have changed your life radically, it's important that you share it with people who are coming behind you. You don't have to learn it by their own mistakes. They can learn by my mistakes. And so some of the wonderful lessons that I've learned, I'm going to share with you guys. And that have helped me to live a life of exceptional joy and peace, despite the hardships I've faced. I've faced my own hardships. But I really know that God has given me this amazing peace. And I believe that it can be for anybody. And so, I mean, not only lessons that I've learned as an adult, but, lessons also for those, some of you guys, that you can go and teach your kids, because, I wish I could have gone back as a youngster and told myself some of the things that had happened. I mean, just off the pat, I don't know if we listened to an advert or what happened, but I just said to you, Al, what would you tell the younger you? I asked her this on holiday. And I said, you know what, the first thing I'd tell my younger me, which isn't in today's message, but I'm going to just share it quickly, don't be a rebel. I was a rebel. A rebel is somebody who always knows better than everybody else. I always thought I knew better. Authority figures and me were like, we were on two different sides, right until I was over 40. And why? I just realized so much, I lost so much in being a rebel. I was a leader, and when you're a rebel and a leader, other leaders who are not rebels don't like you. And they don't want you anywhere near their people. Anybody experience that? I couldn't figure out why most of my friends at school, their parents wouldn't let me in their house. I'd go knocking on the door. He's not available. Go home. Sorry. I used to think it was funny, I got to think it was funny, otherwise I'd have probably just cried every day. But like I said, I had a wonderful personality. I took everything funny. But there was another side to it where I lost out on so much because I didn't realize that what I was doing was actually hurting me. One of the most important facts for every believer to know is that the finish line is the start of the Christian walk. You don't start at the start line. When we got born again, we started at the finish line. The bottom line is Jesus has already won the race for you and me. We actually have come straight into being winners. The day you were born again, you became a winner. And when you truly understand that, you'll live like a winner. You'll live like royalty. You know what I love about Prince Harry? And I was preparing, so I didn't get to see any of the wedding. I'm really hoping that I'll be able to see some of it. Oh, okay. Serena thought it wasn't worth it, but I love royal weddings, and I think I'd especially love that wedding. But what I love about both of those people is that before, neither of them did it to impress the other one. They didn't know each other, but they were looking out for the poor. They used their influence. She was famous, he was royal. They used their fame and their royalty to look out for those less fortunate than them. And when you and I understand that we're royalty, that we're winners, we'll start serving people in a way that, Jesus said, if you want to be great, go and serve. And there's something great about servanthood. And so when you realize you're a winner, you'll stop looking to others to try and get them to serve you. You'll realize, I've got everything I need. I'm going to go and serve someone less fortunate than myself. And the amazing thing is, God just grows you in that period. And so one of the most important things I believe is that learning that you've already, when you start this Christian walk, you've already won the race. You don't have to impress God, because God's already impressed by Jesus. He's so impressed by Jesus. And when you say, Jesus, you impress me, I'm excited about what you've done for me, you impress God. That's the greatest way to impress God, is just to believe in His Son. And so, as I say, I don't mean you be arrogant when you think like a leader or when you think like a winner or royalty, but you use your gift. You use this gift that God's given you, and you use it for greatness, to go and minister and help and serve others. And but for the sake of us walking away, I want to share 3 points which I'm going to call action steps for today, and that's not one of them. And so the action step, I'm going to ask you that if you're faced with any of these action steps, that you actually do what you've learned. One of the greatest things you can learn is, James says it in James chapter 1, he says, be doers of the word and not hearers only, lest you deceive yourself. You'll look in the mirror and you'll see something wrong, and then you walk away and you forget that you haven't fixed it. Basically, that's the thing. And so one of the secrets of a successful Christian walk is to do what you hear. Do what you learn. Don't just know it. You learn a whole bunch of things and you know nothing. You don't actually live any of it. So the first action step we're going to deal with today is to forgive yourself and others quickly. One of the greatest lessons, one of the things I used to struggle with is I didn't struggle so much with forgiving others. I could forgive others. I struggled with forgiving myself. I used to call myself names. I don't know if any of you do that. You do something wrong and you idiot, stupid idiot. How many of you can just put up your hand? Oh, quite a lot of you. Okay. So I was my worst enemy. I mean, I would be so angry with myself. And then I'd relive those thoughts and and I'd just get crosser and cross with myself. Now I have had a few occasions where that's been with someone else. Where I've been so angry with someone else that every time I think about that person, it just affects my whole everything. It affects my life. My life becomes dark. My life becomes filled with this person who hurt me, this person who did something. And so it's so important for you and I to forgive ourselves and others quickly. And Jesus puts it like this in Mark 11, verse 25. Whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. Now, you can think of that just in a way that God's kind of mean. He doesn't even forgive my sins when I'm just because I'm struggling. God is God. He can forgive easily, but I'm struggling to forgive. Well, the truth of the matter is, let me say I haven't forgiven myself. And God wants to forgive me. Do you think I will benefit from Him forgiving me? Not at all. In fact, it's happened. I've said, God, forgive me. And then I will shoot down myself all over again. And God said, I want to forgive you. You got to forgive yourself. Or on the other hand, what happens is when we hold on to somebody. Royke, just get up for a minute, please. What forgiveness or unforgiveness does is and Roy's he hasn't done any harm to me, but let's say he's done harm to me. I'm saying I will not let him go. God says, but if you don't let him go, you're going to have to take him wherever you go. This is what's going to happen. And Roy, you just don't follow me, just be pulled by me. But this is the weight that I'm going to carry. God, have you seen what he did to me? And God's saying, just come. and and I carry a weight. Thank you, my buddy. I carry this weight. And I'm carrying the weight. And how many of you are carrying weights? I'll never forget the story. I was still a new believer, and I was in my first church in Christian City, or Bedford View Christian Center, as it was known at that stage. Now it's known as Christian Family Church. But at the time, a lady got up to share her testimony and how the Lord had delivered her from unforgiveness and from bitterness and depression and everything. And she said that it was against her husband. She was an elderly lady. She said, I've been in bondage for a very long time. For 40 years, I've been angry with my husband. And so our pastor was interviewing her. She was on stage and he was asking her questions. And so he said, so where's your husband now? No, he's dead. So how long has he been dead? 40 years. For 40 years, she was carrying an unforgiveness against him. Her own life was ruined with a man who wasn't even on earth. And how many of us have allowed people to affect our lives, have allowed people to keep us in bondage, have allowed people to make us carry this weight that we shouldn't be carrying. And so Jesus says, forgive so that your Father in heaven can forgive. For you not only forgive you, but forgive them. Jesus says in John chapter 20, he said to his disciples, whoever sins you forgive, I'll forgive. Whoever sins you retain, I will retain. In other words, I will not forgive someone if you don't forgive them. Now that's a very hectic thing for God to say, but that's why I think God allows the pain of unforgiveness. He allows us to feel how horrible it is not to forgive until we get to that place where we say, okay, I'll forgive. Because not every human has the ability or the authority that Jesus gave the disciples. But every son of God, every daughter of God has that authority. And so with us, God gives us these rules, and he says, I want you to understand something. Forgive, so that I can forgive you your trespasses. And Paul the Apostle tells us in Romans chapter 12 from verse 17, never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you're honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Verse 19, dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God, for the scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. You know something amazing? Do you know why there's so much problems in the Middle East? Because the law for both Muslim and Jew is an eye for an eye. Jesus came and changed that law. But if we live with an eye for an eye, we'll never ever get out of a mess. You take my eye, I'll take your eye. Somebody else takes and it just keeps going until Jesus says, if someone slaps you on the one side, turn the other cheek. And when you understand that that's the only way we're going to stop strife, that's the only way we're going to bring peace. And when you and I learn that the one who is stronger is the one who is able to turn the other cheek. When I look at the story of Jesus being crucified, I don't see a whole bunch of strong guys and one weak guy. I see one strong man who says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And I see a whole bunch of weak people following each other, just trying to destroy this person who makes them feel guilty. And so I want to encourage you. Verse 20 says, instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you'll heap burning coals of shame on their heads. Don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. You conquer the devil by doing good. Jesus said there's no law against doing good. Even on the Sabbath, you can do good. You know, this is the cool thing. Whatever, if you want to do good, go and do it. If somebody hurts you and you do good to them, don't worry if they don't respond the way you want. You know, that's one of the things also. If you can just learn this, you may not get the response that you want. You think, okay, I'm going to do it God's way. I'm going to turn the other cheek, and the oak gives you a bigger slap on the other cheek. And because that's typical, like what can happen. It doesn't mean that you haven't won the battle. You may not have won the physical battle right there, but I'll tell you what, you have won. I've even seen boxers where they've said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this guy punch me, but because the boxer knows how strong he is, he laughs, he smiles, because it's a way of intimidating his enemy. The guy gives him his best shot. He says, "Is that all you got? Is that all? You want to give me another shot?" Now, when you and I do that, and we're actually in the spirit realm where we say, you know what, you can't hurt me. I'm not going to allow you to control my life by unforgiveness. I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to forgive you. Eventually, they can't understand what's happening. They just freak out and they run. But you've won. And so, Paul explains this in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. When you and I realize that the fight we're having is not with the person we're fighting with, the fleshly person. The Lord gave me a revelation years ago of chess, a game of chess. I remember getting cross with somebody who was beating me every time. And I was getting a little bit angry. But I thought, you know what, I never get angry with the pawn or the bishop or the queen or the king or whatever. Not the king, he just sort of stays out of the way there. But I never get angry with any of the little pieces, because they don't have a mind of their own. They're just doing what my opponent is telling them to do. And our opponent is not the human being who's attacking us. Our opponent is a spiritual wickedness. It's a demon. It's devilish darkness. Our opponent is not the fleshly being. And if you can see it like that and realize, just like Jesus could do on the cross, that's why I believe he could say, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They're being pulled by the devil. This is the devil, and God is definitely going to avenge our problems. He's going to avenge us. And we don't have to take revenge. God is going to do it. And so along with forgiveness comes no regret. And I love this because I don't know how many of you noticed, but that would just freak me out if I went to a tattoo shop and they spelt regrets wrong. No. Now, that's our second action point. Philippians 3:13 says, "Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus." Now I thought I'd give another one. Can you imagine how painful they must have been? And he gets spelled soldier wrong on the scalp of his head. He's a soldier of Christ. Now, when you have that, you can't afford to regret. It's a tattoo. It's over. You got no regrets, or soldier of Christ. You got to just live by no regrets. I'm not going to regret. I had a simple little situation happen on Thursday or Friday. We went to gym, and I said to Yael, you know what, let's use some of my points. The Discovery Vitality things for being a good exercise person. And so I had 3 free vouchers that I needed to use, and I thought they were the 20th, up to the 20th. So I said, let's go. So I opened my phone, and it was on the 18th that I'm looking on my phone. And the one is for the 16th, one is for the 17th. And I tell you, Yael just said, get over it. Just forget it. Because it's like, I've wasted $39. It's $78. I've wasted $78. And I thought, you know what? You can live with that feeling of wasting $78 for what? Or you can just do like she said and just get over it. You can't cry over spilt milk or over unused vouchers. Just go, just have no regrets. And I thought, if something as small as that can cause regret, how much more some of the stupid decisions you and I have made. And we've all made them. But the sooner we realize no regrets. One of the things my folks taught us as young kids, they said, whatever you do, always leave each other. We were 4 kids, and we were all kind of fairly boisterous, and 2 girls, 2 boys. And, in our house, the one who shouted the loudest was the one who won the argument, that kind of thing. And my dad always used to say, Trev, just get in the second gear. Just get in the second gear. I was like, I didn't realize, only afterwards I realized when you're in first gear, you make a real noise. or calm down to a dizzy roar. That was my dad's favorite. Hey, Trev, just calm down to a dizzy roar. But we would have our little moments, brothers and sister moments. And my folks said, whatever you do, don't leave company, the people's company, in a way that you're going to have a regret. If something happened to your brother or your sister and you never saw them again, don't let that be where you regret and you think, if only I'd done this, if only I'd done that. I've done lots and lots of funerals. And the funerals where they've been the saddest, the most terrible, have been the ones with regrets. I conducted my mom and dad's funeral, and it was beautiful funerals because there were no regrets. I looked at my brother and sisters and all of our family, and we all love one another, and I realized, man, what a privilege we have to be able to have this situation where we just don't have any regrets. And so I want to encourage you, if there are broken relationships that you got, especially with family members, I don't care what they did to you. You make sure that there's no regret from your side. Doesn't matter whether they can choose their own thing. As long as you know what, I tried my best. I've left it from my side, I'm at peace. If something had to happen to them, I know I've done my best. You can't do your best when they've passed away. And if you're living in a situation where they have already passed away and you're feeling that regret, I want to just encourage you to forgive yourself. You can't fix what's unfixable. But while you can, fix it. Fix whatever you can fix. Don't have enemies. You know what? It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. I think that's probably what happened with that lady with the 40 years. She probably had a regret and got so angry with that man for not letting her fix whatever needed to be fixed, that it kept her in bondage. And so the third action step is don't condemn yourself for being tempted. You know, for many years I would be tempted. We've all been tempted, and I still get tempted at times. But I used to think if God could see what's going on in my mind right now, He'll just throw me right into hell. So I would like try and put up a steel wall between me and God. It was like, okay, you can't see into my brain. And I'd be wanting to repent. It's not like I was living in this wonderful, blissful sin in my brain. I was feeling guilty. I was feeling condemned, and I was feeling like if God could see it. Guess what? God could see it. What it was doing to me was it was making me run away from God as opposed to run to God. It took me years as a believer. I was even in the ministry already, and I used to struggle with thoughts that would affect, that I thought, shimbers, never mind God. If any human saw the thoughts I had, they'd think, whoa! And he calls himself a Christian. And for me, that scripture, Matthew 5:28, does anybody know what Matthew 5:28 says? Well, I'll tell you what it says. It says, if a man looks at a woman with lust, then he's already committed adultery in his heart. And Jesus carries on and he says, if you're angry with your brother and you call him an idiot or a fool, then you're in danger of hellfire. But for me, I didn't know what that meant. I thought that meant if you looked at a woman, and I'm a man, so when you look at a woman, if you think she's attractive or whatever it is, this is lust, and now you're in trouble. And now you're already committing adultery. And Jesus is just like saying, you wicked, wicked guy. Now there's two sides to the coin. One is what I believe Jesus was saying in Matthew 5. He was first of all talking to religious people. And he was trying to get people to acknowledge and understand that nobody's perfect. He was trying to get us all to understand, you know what, if you read the Matthew 5-7, the Sermon on the Mount, in truth, none of us are living up to this. We live up to it 80, 90%, some of us if we're really trying hard, but nobody gets 100%. And he puts in Matthew 5:48 a very specific scripture. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. So how many of you made the grade? None of us. And so that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to get people to realize I cannot get to heaven by myself. No matter how good I am. Because Jesus was using the law. He was saying it is said, Matthew 5:27 says it is said, thou shalt not commit adultery. It's the 10 Commandments. But I say, if you look at a woman with lust, then you've already committed adultery in your heart. So all those things, I used to struggle with all these thoughts, these now you can imagine one person could have a thought about women. Another person could have a thought about money. You could see money sitting on a counter there, and it's just like everything says to you, just wish my hand could just brush over that counter and somehow slip it into my pocket. Now one person doesn't get affected by that temptation. It's not their temptation. Somebody else, it is their temptation. Some of us exaggerate. Some of us, we have our different temptations. And when you realize a temptation, Martin Luther said this, temptation is like a bird that flies over your head. You can't stop birds flying over your head, but you can stop them from nesting in your hair. And that's the same way as a temptation. And so when I also realized what lust was, when Jesus says if a man lusts after a woman, then he's committing adultery. It's that heartfelt desire that says, I want her. I want to. It's the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet. I want to. I want this person. And the only thing stopping you having her, or you having him, depending on who I'm talking to here, the only thing stopping you is they're not allowing that. So that if they actually said, here I am, you've committed adultery. And so it's that thing of just, if you have thoughts, if things come through your mind, just think, Lord, what I had to learn, and it took me all those years, was I could take my temptations to the Lord. And you go to the Lord and say, Lord, I'm being tempted like this. I know this isn't me. I know this thought isn't me. I'm giving this thought to you. And even if it was me, Lord, I confess my sin. God, is you faithful and just to forgive me all my sin, cleanse me of all unrighteousness. But you know what happens? Many, many believers, because they're under the impression, I've already committed adultery because I've lusted after so-and-so. What do? They do one of two things. They either run away from God in absolute, they just feel useless, or they do even worse. They go and commit adultery because they think, well, I'm already guilty. May as well follow through. Get some benefit out of the deal. How many of you know that this is a very real thing with a lot of believers? And so they feel I've been accused. I may as well take advantage. And so the thing is, a thought unsaid is a deed undone. When you actually don't follow through, you've won a victory. When you get tempted. And so one of the things I want to share with you is, it's very important that you understand this. Jesus understands when someone is tempted. We read in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. A temptation is something that you desperately want to do, by the way. When you get tempted, it's like you have to fight temptation. If it's just, there's bucks there, shouldn't I take it? That's not temptation. It's when you need, let's say you're desperately in need. You are actually, if you don't find $100 in a rush, you're going to be in big trouble. And there, on your buddy's table, is $100. And like everything says to you, just take that $100. I shared with you last week how I had that thing where I was, I was swimming, almost drowned, and that girl was drowning far back behind me. The temptation was to just swim to shore and leave her to drown. It was a real temptation, because I thought I was going to die if I went back. And so everything in me, a lot of me, inside of me said, just swim to the shore. She's dead anyway. Just leave her. She's not going to make it. And something in me said, I'm not going to fall to this temptation. I'm going back, and if we both drown together, that's just going to have to be the par for the course. And so it's that kind of thing of saying, I'm not going to fall to the temptation. But in verse 16 says, let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Grace isn't just forgiveness. Grace is the ability to do the right thing. Al said it this morning. Grace is the ability to do God's will, the power to do God's will. God has given us grace. As believers, we have God's life living in us, the ability to do the right thing. And so we don't have to do it in our own strength. We can do it in God's strength. We can run to the God of mercy, and we can say, Lord, help me. I need your grace to get out of this thing. And I was amazed the first time this happened to me. God just so delivered me of something. It was just so amazing. As I confessed how I felt, because I always used to block like with my steel wall. And then this particular time, nothing was working. And I said, God, this is how I feel. And as I shared it, I thought he was going to be disgusted with me and slap me into another blood group. And instead, he just removed the whole thing, just like it was gone. It was as if it never happened. And I felt like God saying, I want you to be truthful. I want you to be yourself. I want you to learn to love yourself. One of the things I struggled with was being me as a Christian. I felt like if I'm just the real me, that I'm actually not really spiritual. I must kind of be a spiritual me. like a religious me. And God had to get me to realize that He loves me, the me that He made me to be. And yes, I can improve on being me. I can improve being a better me. But God can do that as I look to Him for grace in time of need. And like I say, the other side is don't allow yourself to fall into temptation. You can be tempted, but don't allow yourself to fall. When you realize it's a temptation, you realize, I don't need to fall to this. And also, when those of you that have ever fallen in temptation, in whatever temptation you faced, the consequences, those feelings of shame and guilt, all of that stuff, whether people found out about it or not, it doesn't matter. How you feel, you know it's not worth it. It's not worth it. No. I will not fail. I will not fall. I'm not going to do whatever my body or my mind or whatever is trying to tell me. I'm not going to do it. And some of you, you don't struggle with lust, and you don't struggle with theft or whatever. You struggle with anger. You just get so furious, and you'll say whatever you like, and you actually think it's a great thing. You think it's being honest, that you can just tell anybody what you think. I wasn't being personal on anybody. Sure. But that is as much of a temptation to one person as another person has another temptation. When you realize and you say, Lord, I'm coming to you for grace. I don't want to choose that way. I want to choose your way. Help me to live above sin. And so those are things that I've really had to learn. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, no temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape that you may be able to bear it. And man, I can vouch for that. I have been tempted over my life. And I have seen God deliver me from temptation. Sometimes the temptation was so powerful that I had to go and beg God, please deliver me from this thing. But the Lord delivered me. The Lord just took that need. It's almost like a need, like you feel like you're being, grabbed like by something. But here He says He'll make a way of escape that we may be able to bear it. So even if it seems difficult, as you choose to willingly forgive yourself and others quickly, and as you choose not to have any regrets, and you choose not to allow yourself to be condemned for being tempted, I believe that you're going to experience life in a brand new way. You're going to see amazing things happen as you choose God's escape route. Because forgiveness is God's escape route. Choosing no regret is God's escape route. Choosing not to fall to temptation is God's escape route. As you choose that, you'll leap over walls of adversity. I believe that with all my heart. This is not just, I'm preaching my life here. I'm preaching what God has done for me. And God can do the same for you. And you'll live a life of joy and peace, and you and your loved ones will get to enjoy life to the full. That's really, you know what? Yeah, Al and I have faced some hard times at H2O. It hasn't been easy. But man, I've enjoyed walking in God's peace. I've lived a full life every day. I've had a few nasty moments, but really, truthfully, the Lord has just enabled me as I've done those three things and others that I'm going to be sharing in the future.